So in today's video, we're going to be looking at square and cube numbers, as well as square and cube roots. So a square number is anything times itself. So for example, a times a, 2 times 2, 10 times 10. And in this example here, we've used square grid, which you get in your maths books, just to help visualize it. So here we've got 1 times 1. We've got 2 squares times 2 squares. 3 times 3, 4 times 4, and 5 times 5. And you can count the squares. So for example, in 2 times 2, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. Or in 3 times 3, if you count all these up, you'll find that we have 9 squares. But hopefully by now you're quite familiar with your times tables, and you know that 1 squared, or 1 times 1, is 1. 2 squared, or 2 times 2, is 4. 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and 5 squared is 25. So a square number is just anything times itself. In the example here, we've got 3 squared, or 3 times 3, which is 9, and that's our square number. But we also have something called a square root. And a square root is just this little funny symbol here, which is a bit of a funky V. And what that symbol means is what number times what number makes 9. So if we put the number 16 here, for example, what times what makes 16? And that is what that square root means. And in this case, your answer would be 4. So what I want you to do here is to pause the video and complete the table of square numbers. So 4 times 4, or 4 squared, is 16. 5 squared is 25. 6 squared is 36. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. 9 squared is 81. And 10 squared is 100. 11 squared is 121. And 12 squared is 144. And it's important that you memorize these numbers, because when we go into the next bit where we talk about square roots, it's really helpful that you remember what your square numbers are. It makes it a lot easier. Here are some questions for you to try, so pause the video and then we'll go through them together. So we'll start with the square numbers first. So 2 squared is 4. 4 squared is 16. 6 squared is 36. 10 squared is 100. And 12 squared is 144. Now looking at the square roots, remember this means something times something is whatever our number is here. So in this case, it is 5. 5 times 5 is 25. The square root of 49 is 7, because 7 times 7 is 49. Here you'll notice the answer over here, that 12 times 12 is 144, and the square root of 64 is 8, because 8 times 8 is 64. So as well as square numbers, we have cube numbers, and cube numbers are particularly helpful when we're thinking about volume, because all we're doing is timesing the length by the width by the height on these cubes here. So in this case here, we've got 1 by 1 by 1. Here we've got 2 by 2 by 2. Here, 3 by 3 by 3. And here, 4 by 4 by 4. So those first cube numbers are going to be 1, 8, 27, and 64. So volume is where cube numbers become quite helpful. So in this example of the Rubik's Cube, it has 3 by 3 by 3, which is going to give it 27. And just like we had the root symbol, we also have the cube root symbol, which is that we put this little 3 here to show that it's the cube root of 27, or something times something times something equals our answer, which obviously in this case is 3 times 3 times 3, which equals 27. So we're going to pause the video here and we're going to write in our cubed numbers. Okay, so let's do the middle column first. So 4 times 4 times 4, 5 times 5 times 5, and so on and so forth. Okay, so 4 cubed is 64, and 5 cubed is 125. 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. Then 7 cubed is 343. 8 cubed is 512. 9 cubed is 729. 10 cubed is 1000. 11 cubed is 1331. And finally, 12 cubed is 1728. The cube numbers are a little bit harder to remember, but I think if you can try and remember 1 to 5, that will do you quite well in exams. Some questions here for you to try, so pause the video and then we'll go through them again. Okay, our first one then, 3 cubed is 3 times 3 times 3. So 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. Our next one is the cube root of 8, so that's something times something times something equals 8. And hopefully we remember from what we just wrote, 2 times 2 times 2 is going to be 8. The next one we're after is 10 cubed, so that's 10 times 10 times 10. So 10 times 10 is 100, times that by 10 is 1000. Okay, next one we've got is the cube root of 64. So something times something times something equals 64. And in this case, 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. And our final one is 5 cubed, which is of course 5 times 5 times 5. 5 times 5 is 25, times that by 5 is 125. Final questions for us to try today then is these ones here. So pause the video and then we'll go through them. Okay, so 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. 7 squared is 7 times 7, which is 49. And 2 cubed is 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. 10 cubed is 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1000. 2 to the power 5 is just 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. The next one we've got is 10 to the power 6, so 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000, times another 10 is 10,000, again 100,000, and times 10 one more time to give us 1 million. The next one is the square root of 25, which is 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. The square root of 64 is 8, because 8 times 8 is 64. The cube root of 27 is 3, because 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. This one seems a little bit harder, but it's just something times something equals 32, and we've actually already put this answer up here, which is 2. So 2 to the power 5 is 32, or 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 32. Next one here, we've got to basically find A times A times A times A equals 10,000, which again we've already done up here on F, which is going to be 10, because 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000, times another 10 is 10,000. Final one, don't be put off by the fact there's a letter there, it's the exact same thing. Something squared equals 36, so something times something equals 36, so x has to be 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. And there's your answers.